My name is Claire Morgan, and for years everyone in my family believed I was the one person they could always depend on. I never complained when my parents needed help, and I especially never complained when my little brother Ethan needed me. Ethan was 8 years younger than me, and after my parents started working longer hours, I became the person who made his breakfast, helped him with homework, took him to school and stayed awake when he was sick. I wasn't his mother, but I was there for him when he needed someone. What I never expected was that one afternoon the same parents who had depended on me for years would threaten to have me arrested for doing exactly what they had asked me to do. It started when my mother called me at work. Her voice sounded irritated. "Claire, you need to pick Ethan up from school today." I looked at the clock. "Mom, I have a meeting in 20 minutes. "Then cancel it," she snapped. "He's your brother, you can handle it." I sighed and left work early. When I reached the school, Ethan was sitting alone near the office, holding his backpack against his chest. "Where's Mom?" he asked. "She's working late," I said. "Come on, let's go home." He nodded quietly. That evening I made him dinner and helped him finish his homework. Around 9, my parents finally came home. My father walked into the kitchen, looked at Ethan and immediately frowned. "Why is he still awake?" He asked. "He had homework," I explained. My mother dropped her purse on the counter. "Claire, you don't need to act like you're his parent." I stared at her. "You asked me to pick him up. Picking him up doesn't mean you get to make decisions for him," she replied. I didn't argue. I simply told Ethan to get ready for bed. The next morning, everything seemed normal until I discovered a message from my mother on my phone. She said they had decided Ethan needed to stay with our aunt for a while, and I was not supposed to interfere. I was surprised, but I agreed. A few hours later, Ethan called me from school. His voice was shaky. "Claire, Mom said Aunt Lisa is taking me away tomorrow. I don't want to go." I told him I would talk to our parents. When I arrived home that evening, I found Ethan sitting on the stairs with tears in his eyes. My mother was packing his clothes into a suitcase. "What's happening?" I asked. "We're sending him to Aunt Lisa," she said. "It's already decided." "For how long?" I asked. "As long as necessary." Ethan looked at me. "Please don't let them send me away." I knelt beside him and told him we'd figure everything out. My mother immediately became angry. "Don't make promises you can't keep." I stood up. "I'm not trying to take him away from you. I'm just asking why you're sending him somewhere he doesn't want to go." My father stepped into the room. "Claire, stay out of this." I couldn't understand how quickly everything had changed. These were the same people who had called me whenever they needed someone to take care of Ethan. Now they were acting as if I had no right to even speak. That night I called our aunt. She sounded surprised. "Claire, I haven't agreed to take Ethan," she said. "Your mother called me, but I told her I needed time." That made me realize something was seriously wrong. The next morning my parents left for work, leaving Ethan with me again. Before leaving, my mother said, "Don't take him anywhere, don't make any decisions, and don't interfere." I nodded. But later that afternoon, Ethan developed a fever. I called my mother several times, but she didn't answer. I called my father. Nothing. I couldn't just leave him sick, so I took him to a nearby clinic. The doctor examined him and said it was nothing serious, but recommended rest and fluids. When we returned home, my parents were already there. My mother looked furious. "Where were you?" she demanded. "Ethan was sick, so I took him to the clinic." My father stepped forward. "We told you not to make decisions for him." "He had a fever," I said. I wasn't going to ignore him. My mother picked up her phone. "That's enough, I'm calling the police." I thought she was bluffing, then she actually started dialing. "Mom, what are you doing?" I asked. "I'm reporting you for taking our son without permission." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You left him with me," I said. "You told me to take care of him." My father interrupted. "Know your place, Claire. You're his sister, not his parent." Those words hurt more than I expected. For years, they had treated me like a second parent whenever it was convenient. Now they were using that same fact against me. My mother told the police that I had taken Ethan without permission. I calmly explained what had happened and showed them the messages my parents had sent me asking me to pick him up and take care of him. The officers listened, spoke with my parents, and eventually left after determining that the situation was a family dispute. But my parents weren't finished. The next day my father told me I had to leave the house. "You think you're an adult now," he said. "Fine, get out." I packed a small bag and left. I was hurt, but I wasn't going to let their anger control my life. Before leaving, Ethan hugged me and whispered, "Are you coming back?" I promised him I wouldn't disappear. Over the next few days, I started documenting everything. Every message, every request from my parents. Every time they asked me to take Ethan somewhere, I didn't do it to punish them. I did it because I realized I needed to protect myself. Then something unexpected happened. My aunt called me and told me that my parents had asked her to sign a temporary guardianship document for Ethan. She refused. "Claire," she said, "I think your parents are overwhelmed. They don't know what they're doing." I agreed, but I also knew I couldn't fix their choices. A week later, my parents contacted me again. This time they weren't angry. They wanted me to come to a family meeting. I almost refused, but Ethan begged me to come. When I arrived, my parents sat across from me at the table. My father looked uncomfortable. My mother finally spoke. "We overreacted." I said nothing. She continued, "We thought you were trying to take control of Ethan's life." I looked at her. I never wanted to be his parent. I wanted him to feel safe. My father lowered his eyes. "We shouldn't have threatened you with the police." I told them that wasn't something I could simply forget. "You used the fact that I cared about Ethan against me." The room went silent. Finally, my mother apologized. She admitted that they had become overwhelmed with work, money, and parenting responsibilities, and instead of asking for help, they had blamed me. I told them I was willing to rebuild our relationship, but there had to be boundaries. I would help Ethan because I loved him, but I would never again accept being treated like a parent when they needed help and like a stranger when they wanted control. My father agreed. From that day forward, things slowly changed. Ethan stayed with our parents, but I remained involved in his life in a healthy way. I visited him, helped him with homework when he asked, and most importantly, I stopped carrying responsibilities that weren't mine. Months later, Ethan gave me a small birthday card. Inside he had written, "Thank you for always being there." I smiled when I read it. My parents had once told me, "You're not his parent." They were right, I wasn't, but I was his sister. And I finally understood that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself or allowing others to use your kindness. Sometimes fighting back doesn't mean shouting or seeking revenge. Sometimes it means standing calmly, telling the truth, setting boundaries, and refusing to let anyone convince you that caring about someone is something you should be ashamed of.